Good morning, and welcome to the Motivational Devotional, where we are merging motivation and spirituality to create a daily dose of confident positivity. I hope that this morning's podcast will help you to be more spiritually and positively motivated so that you can transform your day. Have you ever seen a pencil without an eraser? Not an old pencil with the eraser worn off, but actually made without one? I've seen art pencils with no eraser and those stubby little pencils at the golf course that don't have erasers, but a pencil intended for writing or figuring out math and science problems always has an eraser. In golf, the score is the score, and an eraser shouldn't be needed, although a person could still make a mistake writing a number in the wrong place or something like that. The artwork I've done with a pencil sometimes needed an eraser, but far more than one on a pencil would cover, and that's why they make those large gum erasers. Usually with sketching, if I make a mistake, then I just work it into the piece and don't need to erase it. Regardless of whether the pencil came with an eraser, the point of using a pencil instead of a pen is that it can still be erased nonetheless, when, not if, we make a mistake. As soon as a human being puts a pencil tip on paper, the possibility of mistakes is present. The same is true for anything else we do, which is why we have car insurance, and emergency rooms, and paper towels. As soon as you get out of bed, you are like the pencil tip on a piece of paper, and the likelihood of you making a mistake increases with every minute you are out of your bed. Should that thought keep you in your bed all day? Absolutely not. You probably think that suggestion is crazy anyway. A person can't not live for fear of making a mistake, right? That's true, and yet people do it all the time. People don't live the life they should live because they fear making mistakes. I personally know all about this because I've used up a lot of years with the same fear. I listened to yesterday's podcast with someone whose opinion I trust a great deal, and toward the end of it, there is a mistake. It's not just a funny diction sort of thing or a flub of a word or a mispronunciation. It's a flub of a phrase, and I stop, grunt, and then start that phrase over. It's the kind of thing I commonly do when recording this or any podcast. In fact, there are very likely mistakes as I record this one. But after I record any of them, and this is the 122nd one, I listen back and edit out the mistakes and dog barks and burps and pauses to clear my throat so that the finished product is as professional as I can produce. When I heard that mistake in episode 121, I was immediately horrified, but I was reminded that it was just a mistake, and asked if it bothered me and why it might bother me so much. My immediate response to that was that it bothered me because it doesn't sound professional. Nobody can argue with that. However, we talked about it, and I admitted that I do hold myself to a different expectation than I hold other people. With my ADHD, I've had to learn to expend hyper effort in double-checking myself and my work so that what I do is no less professional or excellent than anyone else, even people who hire editors and producers for a lot of money. I'm just me, but anyone taking the time to listen deserves an experience of excellent quality. A mistake that reeks of unprofessionalism is, to me, a big sign saying that this guy doesn't know what he's doing. So, let me also share something from that editing process for yesterday's podcast, and this was really crazy. I allowed myself to be distracted. I recorded and edited at a time that I also needed to do some other things. I was going back and forth from my computer to the other things going on. I use a multi-track digital audio workstation with the intro and outro on different tracks, and the main piece, like you're listening to now, on a track at the bottom. For the next episode, I use the previous episode and add another new track at the bottom to make it easier to line up the timing of things, and I mute all the other tracks when I record the new one. Sorry if that's tedious detail for some of you, but I explain that to say that I heard one mistake while editing for yesterday that I kept trying to edit out, and it never changed. I was getting frustrated. I listened to that little section, highlighted and deleted what seemed to be the mistake, and then played it only to hear that it was still there. I did it over and over, confused as to how I could have deleted several seconds of audio, and that mistake was still there. Mind you, this wasn't the mistake that still remains in yesterday's podcast. This was a different one, and I almost totally re-recorded the whole thing. However, it suddenly occurred to me that the track I was editing was gray. That's the color of a muted track. The only audible track was off the bottom of my screen, and I couldn't even see it, though I could hear it. Hand slap to the front of the forehead. Duh. I scrolled down, saw where that little mistake was just by looking at the waveform, deleted it, and it was right after that. I did listen to the rest of it, but somehow I missed the one that shows in yesterday's episode, and I was initially wanting to replace it with a corrected version so that all of my podcasts so far are professional. However, I've decided to leave it. I want it to be a reminder to myself, but also to anyone else, that none of us is perfect. Despite all our best efforts, something will escape our scrutiny. Something unintentional will happen. One of my favorite spiritual teachers was Ram Dass, who said that living a spiritual journey free of attachments means that we need to live an impeccable life. Impeccability, however, is not the same thing as perfection. Being impeccable means living to the highest standard and living with a clear conscience that in everything we do, we've done our best with all integrity and have nothing hanging over our heads. Perfection is just not something sustainable for human beings. We can, however, always strive to be impeccable. A lot of mistakes can be worked into the artwork of our daily lives, but there are those mistakes that just won't go away and they just can't be fixed. Honestly, for someone with ADHD, I'm happy to have done 120 episodes of this podcast without that kind of mistake, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I've spent time on it in this podcast as a way to say that I know it's there. To me, it's a glaring mistake, but I own it and accept it, and it is what it is. Moving on. I want to say to everyone that we need to accept our imperfections at the same level of our strengths, but our imperfections aren't measurements of our value. The value of a human being is immeasurable because we are all manifestations of the creative power of the universe. If there is anything to measure, it is who we become in spite of our mistakes without being attached to them. No matter what kind of mistakes we make in life, sometimes they're just out there, beyond the help of an eraser, and it is what it is. We own those. We can leave them there without any attachment that lets those mistakes pull us from spiritual connection to the divine. Let them go. Give up trying to be perfect. Do what you can to live an impeccable life so that you can, every day, enrich your life by increasingly manifesting the divine through your journey, because all of creation is conspiring in your favor. Trust that the universe, in spite of your mistakes, always has your back. Playwright George Bernard Shaw once said, "A life spent making mistakes is not only more honorable, but more useful than a life spent doing nothing." Thank you for taking the time to listen today. Please help keep this podcast going by following the Motivational Devotional Facebook page, following @Threefold Way Radio on Twitter, and sharing the written format of today's message from motivational-devotional.com on your social media. I am deeply grateful for your support, and thank you for letting Motivational Devotional be part of your journey. Peace out. See you tomorrow. Motivational Devotional is a production of Threefold Way Radio, LLC.